Is everybody ready? No? Nah, I'm going anyway.
I'm Zurich, Oz. I work, I travel, and I bring my irreverent attitude to everything so that you can live the life you love. Look at this footage. It's mesmerizing. Usually when I go on a shoot, I have an idea in my head of what I'm about to say. But it was such a hassle to get to Rhine Falls in northern Switzerland and fight the oppressive morning fog for just a few minutes of flight time that my brain was cluttered more with not losing my drone to the river mist than coming up with a cogent story. And so, this footage sat idle in the archives of my footage storehouse. Honestly, I try to run a segment with several different shots so it's not so damn boring, but I just can't get enough of this scene. But notice where the boats have dropped people off. See that tiny bit of rock in the middle of the raging river? Boats come and go, ferrying people into the middle of the raging rapids for the rush of experience. Sadly, this is the vantage point from which most people run their financial lives. They use money as a rush instead of as a tool. Sure, it's cool to stand on that tiny bit of rock as 90,000 gallons rush by each minute, but what will happen to you when the flood comes and the water volume doubles? You will get washed downstream. Now, wouldn't it be better to be up here with the vantage point of the whole scene? Not just of the falls, but also downstream and upstream and around the bend, etc. Wouldn't you like to know how to park yourself in one of the small pools if you just didn't feel like going over the falls? The falls are about as good an analogy of cash flow as I'm ever going to get. Think of the water as your money, whether income or investments. Wouldn't you want to know how far upstream the dam was built? Or maybe have a sense of the seasonal flow levels and or how to contain that flow so that it didn't wipe out your town nearby? Wouldn't you try to figure out how to divert some of the water to various channels to power your own objectives? Wouldn't you explore the surrounding countryside to look and see what opportunities or challenges may exist that could improve or thwart your financial future? If you weren't an expert on the flow and or control of water, or of money in this case, you'd probably hire an expert to manage it for you. You'd hope that this expert took the time to fly up here to this aerial vantage point to better understand your entire financial life. You'd hope he could identify ways to improve your financial condition, and maybe even divert some of the money to alleviate your tax burden. But most of all, you'd want an expert that had spent years studying every aspect of this process and had gone over the falls a few times himself just to make sure he knew what it was like and to help prepare others for it. In any case, it would certainly be better than standing in the middle of the river and waiting to be washed downstream. Now let's say you hate water. How about this footage of the Ehrenberg Castle in Austria? Do you know what it took to hike up here? 4,000 vertical feet after driving hours through random back roads and hiking up here with 50 pounds of gear to shoot this shot. Now, why do you care? Because some things cannot be revealed with spreadsheets and graphs. Some things need to be seen to be believed. So, at Ehrenberg, do you see that hill up there to the right? That's where the villagers eventually hauled cannon to bomb the Ehrenberg rulers out of power. Now, what does this teach you? Get on high ground. Don't build your castle from a point where a bunch of villagers could bomb you out in retaliatory rage. In other words, don't build your investment fortress in a place that is recklessly assailable. Well, unless you want to end up being bombed out of existence with all of your assets being owned by the state. Pass. So this begs the question of how and where to build your investment fortress. Luckily, one of my favorite towns in Austria, Salzburg, provides a lovely example of how to be so intimidating that no one attacks you for 1,000 years. Enter the Salzburg Fortress. I mean, just look at this place. It was slowly developed over 1,000 years. The long-range plan was to build a monster so intimidating that no one would dare attack it. And it worked. In its heyday, it could house thousands of people for years, employed a highly trained, well-armed army, and had commanding views in every direction. You'd have to be a real moron to attack it. Now, it's not really possible to get a good look at it from the inside. You need to get a sense of it from the tiny house down here on the ground. Try this footage from my drone. I mean, doesn't it just make you think, holy shit, no wonder nobody screwed with the Austrians for so long. Also, it should make you think, I want my financial life to work like this. I want to be an unassailable fortress of glory, not this little exposed house in the middle of a field. Speaking of which, I built my marriage like the Salzburg Fortress, but my enemies thought it was this little house. Imagine their surprise when they tried to attack it and discovered that we lived in the castle. Game, set, match. After all, didn't Sun Tzu teach us in The Art of War that only a true master wins the war without fighting a single battle? Here's my point. Though it's not possible to build an investment portfolio without risk, there are certainly things you can do to mitigate much of it. In any case, you would certainly pick Salzburg over Ehrenberg. Ideally, you'd be able to build a strong Salzburg-style fortress for your investment portfolio and use your perspective of the Rhine River to take full advantage of your cash flow and maximize your financial plan. Better yet, you'd find an advisor, like me, who could do both for you. Then you could just do the fun part of living the life you love.